So you, so how'd you begin? Was it teaching always kind of like the thing you thought you were gonna do, or how'd you get into, like how that?
Uh, to teaching exercise or teaching
Teaching,
school,
teaching,
teaching. Yeah. Well, my mom was a special ed teacher. I actually went to the University of Maine for engineering. I have my master's in engineering actually.
Which type of engineering?
It's called spatial information, so like GIS and GPS, remote sensing. And when I was getting my master's, I did a fellowship for the National Science Foundation where we would go in to local high schools and middle schools and teach or help teach. And I really liked it. And it wasn't surprising to my mother, but I really liked it. And so then I kind of changed. And while I was getting my master's in engineering, I just took some education classes. So, and luckily, Hamden was nice. They hired me with a conditional certification, so I hadn't done student teaching, but
that's how I got into adult dev too.
So, yeah. So, and I love teaching. Do I love it every day? No, definitely not. But it's so rewarding, these like relationships with kids, and that watching their growth, and seeing how much they progress, and it's rewarding. It really is rewarding, and my mother maybe isn't really happy or my parents aren't happy that I changed from engineering to this, but I mean I feel like, I don't know, I remember in my engineering classes I just never felt like I fit in. I just felt like I was more social than they were, and I don't know, there was always something. I just never felt like a part of the group. But in teaching, I feel like I don't know. It's more natural for me.
Right.
And, like, because I'm super empathetic and caring to everybody. I'm sure Kaylin would say that I like care about everyone. Regardless if they've made me mad or, I still like deep down care about their best interests. So yeah, that's how I've been, I don't know, I've been there like 16 years, I think. Really? So
yeah, it was pretty clear in our parent conference how much you care about your students. I mean, Kaylin was struggling,
yeah.
and not struggle. She was doing fine in the class, but struggling with confidence, and we could see how. For me, like I think running has its similarities, like where you're pushing yourself through barriers, and I've always wanted to like challenge my kids, constantly, don't give up, work through it, figure it out. And Kaylin's got to a point where I think I told you in the conference, where she's been pretty comfortable in most of her classes and does quite well.
Right.
I'm like, I'm glad she's struggling. Like, it's good to see her, because she's going into physical therapy, and I know there's going to be hard times there. Just like, I mean, I did engineering for a little while at UMaine, and I remember how hard that was to push through, and how deep you have to dig.
You have to kind of like dig deep and like be like, it's okay to like struggle, because that's gonna help you in the long run. And
that's what I saw your class as. And I'm glad she's like doing well and struggling at the same time, which I feel bad that you have to be the one putting it on her.
It's okay.
Actually, I studied architecture. What I ended up working in and kind of my degrees in, but when I was going for my master's in architecture, physics broke me. And I ended up stopping. I had done physics in high school and done well. I did physics at UMaine and did all right. And then I had to take it for architecture. And the school I went to, you work during the day, and then you take classes at night. So class started at 10 o'clock at night. And you had to work a full-time job. You were working in an architectural firm which is great because you're learning in the field. And I remember the professor was, he'd come in and he'd tell stories the whole time about it's like, he's not going over physics. Like, and we get home and the homework was just so hard, and then the tests were another level. So I finally told him, like, I need more physics teaching from you.
Yeah.
These stories need to end. And he was like, he goes, anybody else agree with Ben? And everybody raised their hand.
Yeah.
So he hated me. He hated me from then on. Like, every day he'd start telling a story, he'd be like, oh, I can't tell a story. And he'd look at me as...
Yeah.
But that class was above I wasn't ready for it, and I was so exhausted. Who knows if I would have been able to do it, but I see Kaylin, like, I'm like, I love physics, I love learning physics, like, it's such an interesting thing, but I understand your struggle, and I've been helping Kaylin and Logan with math over the years, being a math teacher, and feeling pretty confident in it, but I'm like, Kaylin, you're kind of... Logan's in statistics, which I got an A in statistics, but I struggled through it. Yeah. And I'm like, Kaylin, you're kind of on your own in physics. I helped her once early on. I'm like, yes.
No, she's doing great. She just needs confidence. That's all her. And that's after the parent teacher conference, I really worked on that with her. Helping her with like reassuring her when this is important.
But I did a conditional certificate like you did, a very different path, but. When the market had kind of all fallen apart and we just moved to Maine, and then my job had kind of disappeared. It's like, what can I do? So my brother, who's a teacher in Old Town, was like, why don't you get a conditional certificate? So I did. And I feel like I got lucky in adult ed because all my students were there, wanted to be there, or almost all of them. I mean, there were some that the state kind of, you have to be here to get your benefits or whatever. But for the most part, they're all there, and they wanted... So there's no discipline kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't know how so like when Bucksport, the mill had closed, and it looked like that position was not gonna, they probably wouldn't have the funding to keep the position going. So I was like, do I want to go try to find something else in teaching and try it?
Yeah.
And the having to, like, coming out of that, I'm like, I don't think I could do, like, I don't think I could do high school discipline.
Right. It's hard. Definitely is hard.
I don't know how you do it.
I mean, luckily, like, I don't have a lot of discipline issues because I have, like, the top kids in the school.
I was gonna say that.
I mean, so that's lucky, but it is hard. It's even harder being a female because there's a real lack of respect. Like, if you are a hard disciplinary teacher, they just think you're the B word, unfortunately. But males can be on them and they don't care at all.
We literally had that discussion around the dinner table last night. And the girls are kind of arguing about, well, this teacher commands the room, and it's like, and I don't think Mrs. Houston would mind me mentioning her name, which I think she's such a sweet lady. And Kaylin's doing a
like an internship,
right, helping out in the class, and she talking about the discipline and how she handles it different than another teacher. But Kaylin wasn't really thinking about the male-female thing.
Yeah.
And what it does make a challenge.
It's a big difference, and I think it's harder, like, for Miss Houston. Being a younger female is even harder.
Right.
And like, as females, we're so, like, caring and empathetic, and, like, want to make sure not to hurt your feelings, or that's how I feel. But so I don't have a lot of discipline issues right now. Do I command the room? No, I'm, like, pretty soft spoken, but I think that, like I said earlier, like, that the kids know that I care about them. They do behave because they or if they aren't, they'll turn it around because they know that I care and would be disappointed.
Right.
So that's kind of the route I go, but it doesn't always work, and I'm sure that they take advantage of that a lot of times, and I'll see that more as it gets closer to graduation. But they're just kids, right? I mean, they're gonna make mistakes, and you can't hold them to that for life, because we've all been there and done stupid things that
Yeah, you guide them the best you can.
Right.
Yeah, I remember in adult ed. I mean, there's nothing I've ever done has been more rewarding than that. Having a student that 5th time taking the GED or whatever, and they finally pass. That was, it's amazing.
Right.
The success is. I mean, obviously you have. I don't know. Do you focus on trying not to get too high and not too low, or try to stay even keel, or because the lows can bring you down for sure?
Right.
Like, how do you stay positive?
I mean, it's. I would say this last 2 years have been really challenging to stay positive.
Oh, I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, with with COVID and like the pressure from parents, and I mean, I think parents make it a lot harder. Like they always blame the teacher first. It seems like. So it's hard. It's hard to stay positive. But I mean, I think it comes down to that, like, we care about our students. I call them my kids because, they're basically my kids, and, I want the best for them. And a lot of times, sometimes I step back and be if, like, what matters more, that they learn some content or they feel the support. And so I usually go towards the support more sometimes because I think that matters,
Right. Do you know Sue O'Brien?
I just know who she is. I see her running on our road in the morning.
Right,
I mean, my kids didn't have her.
Yeah, she's done Boston a handful of times, she's a teacher in the district for years, and I did ask her this question. It just made me think of it. Is there something that, like, you wish parents knew more about?
Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I haven't had many major issues with parents, but I just wish parents knew, like, how much we cared for their kids and are putting we're trying to teach them, but that, that we're not, they quickly go to blame us, and I just don't think that's fair. That's fair. We're trying our best, even like in these times. Like, we really are trying our best for their kids' best interest, and sometimes those decisions are hard. Like, like if a kid is cheating or something, like how we handle that. And a lot of times, like, we get pushed back like that it was our fault, and it's really hard because, like, we're just trying our best to, like, help them make good choices. And yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone ever understands teaching and how many hours we put in. Like, no one will ever understand that because it's just, unless you do it, you don't understand it. Being teacher tired.
What was I can't even imagine teaching, like, physics remotely last year, for the most part. I mean, like.
Yeah, that was hard. That was hard. I don't, I didn't definitely. Well, in AP, I got through the content. I just kind of didn't do labs as much because I felt like class time was more important for, like, getting through content and, like, getting through stuff.
And I imagine they're doing watching videos of what labs might be like.
Yeah,
and it's just not the same.
It's not the same. I did do some labs, but it wasn't the same, and the experience. And so this year is better that they're there in person and stuff.
Yeah. So Melissa, she had you as a student. I don't know did Kayla mention that?
Yeah.
Just
today she did.
Yeah, she was saying it might have been your first year at Hamden. I actually have I'll show you what she looks like. This is for you, actually. Our little Christmas card. Melissa's right here, which obviously she looks different than high school. But she's just started as a third grade teacher in Dexter.
Oh, wow.
And she was saying how incredibly far behind students are from that year being off.
Yeah.
And when we were just talking about this, Dee and I were just talking about the repercussions through, all the different age groups that this has happened. I wonder what it's going to, 5 years from now, or the kids that are coming into your classes, or how far back is the second grade,
Yeah, like what age group was hit the hardest?
Yeah.
You wondered that. I know, like, at the high school, like, we found that the freshmen and sophomores they're struggling. Those are the two classes at the high school right now that are struggling hardcore with, like, attendance, discipline, failing.
And do you think that has to do with missing
I would say
that
they
year?
haven't, like, they're, like, for the sophomores, if they were never officially at Hamden Academy with everybody else. They had a hard transition out of, like, from 8th grade to it. I mean, I worry more with the littler kids. I was at a massage yesterday, and my massage therapist was talking about how her daughter's second grade teacher said that most of her kids are functioning at a kindergarten level, and that's, that's more scary than, like, I think
right.
at the high school. I think that the little kids loss, so, we'll see it in, like, 7-8 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I got lucky. I mean, my two girls, I think, are disciplined.
Yeah,
and at an age enough, mature enough, and, if anything, it was a nice prep for college. Actually, they were both doing college classes anyway. So,
right.
But I think of myself at that age, I would have struggled. I would have, and I think, I almost think it might hit the boys maybe even more.
That's the freshmen and sophomores that we're struggling with are mostly boys.
Right. Even though unfortunately, because I've always been one that kind of feels that schools, especially the younger, aren't designed for boys as much.
Yeah, no, totally.
Like, if somebody told me, go run for 40 minutes, okay, now we're going to sit down for a half hour, and I'll go run, and then, and that's how school looked. I don't know what the ideal thing would look like, but I just had I was ADD before ADD was a thing, for sure.
Right.
And it wasn't until maybe my junior year where we had a honor pass, where if you had an A or B average, you didn't have to go to study hall. I was like, oh, okay, now I'll get A's and B's, But that's where I started, like, figuring things out, when I could, even though I did well enough, luckily I could listen and learn well enough that I did all right. I wasn't falling way behind, like, a lot too. But there was an opportunity in this year where these kids were home that they could have probably, but so much falls on the parents who aren't trained teachers, aren't thinking that way.
Right.
And then there was also how many parents took their kids and homeschooled them,
right, but
they were forced into it,
right,
and what a struggle on them.
Right. It's just a mess. I mean, you hope that after all this is done, that that it will all kind of even out, and you just don't want that big gap between, like, the kids who had the opportunities because their parents could help them versus the kids that are gonna fall through the cracks. And, like, that's the part that gets at my heart, that I feel bad for those kids, because they're always the ones that are kind of right on the edge anyways, graduating from high school or making the right choices. But if they're already, like, 2 grade levels behind.
Yeah.
But I'm sure those teachers are trying their hardest to get them back